Okay, let me guess. Your body is completely exhausted. You are so ready for sleep, but your mind? Yeah, your mind is trapped in this endless, looping roller coaster of thoughts. Well, welcome to this explainer. I am so glad you're here today because as a coach, I see this literally all the time. Today, we are stepping in to help that exhausted, overworked brain of yours finally get some much needed rest. We're going to break that loop. We have all been there, right? It's 2 a.m. You're staring up at the dark ceiling, begging for sleep, and wondering, why won't my brain just turn off? But instead of sleeping, you're lying there replaying this totally mundane, everyday conversation from like 5 years ago, overanalyzing every single syllable, and then, out of nowhere, you're stressing over a totally routine email you have to send tomorrow. It is completely and utterly exhausting.
But listen, here is what nobody tells you. And I really want you to hear this. Your brain is not broken. What you're experiencing has a name. It's called maladaptive rumination. And researchers have found that this is actually disproportionately common in people with high cognitive ability, high empathy, and incredibly strong pattern recognition. You aren't defective. Your brain is simply way too good at its job of anticipating problems and protecting you. It just kind of never learned how to stop.
So here is our roadmap for today. We'll look at the late-night spiral, go inside the overthinking brain, cover our cheat codes for mental shifts, then our cheat codes for taking action, and finally, why your brain is not broken. All right, part 1. Inside the overthinking brain. To actually fix the machine, we have to understand the neuroscience of your thought loops. So you have two massive neural networks at play here. First is your prefrontal cortex. Think of this as the CEO. It handles your logical planning and analysis. But in overthinkers, this CEO absolutely refuses to clock out. Then you have the default mode network, or what we'll call the background narrator. This is the system that generates your internal monologue. Overthinking is simply a mechanical feedback loop between these two. The narrator tosses out a hypothetical worry, and the CEO stays up all night rapidly firing neural signals to try and solve a problem that hasn't even happened yet. Understanding this loop reveals exactly why telling yourself to just stop thinking always fails. It's because of the illusion of mental progress. Your brain is actually actively rewarding the loop. Every single time you imagine a scenario and draft a brilliant mental response, your brain releases a tiny little hit of dopamine. You feel like you're making progress on a problem, but in reality, you're just spinning your wheels in a chemical dopamine trap. Okay, let's get to part 2. Cheat codes, mental shifts. Time to dive into our masterclass toolkit. Cheat code number 1 comes straight from acceptance and commitment therapy, and it's called Name It to Tame It. Instead of spiraling, I want you to use this exact phrase. I notice I'm having the thought that. For example, I notice I'm having the thought that I completely ruined that meeting. This technique is called cognitive diffusion. It creates this critical, tiny sliver of distance between you and the worry. You're reminding your brain that a thought is just mental weather passing through. You're observing the storm, you are not the storm. Cheat code number 2 is the 10-10-10 rule. When the spiral starts, you need to force your CEO, that analytical prefrontal cortex, to use accurate data. Ask yourself, does this actually matter in 10 minutes? What about 10 months? 10 years? You're going to find that almost all of your late-night spirals completely vanish by the 10-month mark. Now, why is the 10-10-10 rule so incredibly effective? Well, it grounds you by fighting a psychological bias known as temporal discounting. See, our brains are hardwired to treat immediate problems as enormous, life-or-death emergencies, while viewing distant problems as totally irrelevant. Your brain is literally treating a minor social paper cut like a fatal knife wound just because it happened today. The 10-10-10 rule shrinks that problem right back down to reality. All right, cheat code 3. Now, this sounds completely backward, but it is an incredibly effective CBT protocol. Scheduled worry time. You have to give your brain's threat detection system a firm boundary. Pick a 15-minute window every single day, say 4 p.m. If a worry pops into your head at noon, you tell it, not now, write it down in one sentence and move on. Then at 4 p.m., you sit down and you worry on purpose for exactly 15 minutes. When that timer goes off, you close the notebook. You are teaching your brain that its worries will absolutely be addressed, just not at 2 in the morning. Let's move to part 3, cheat codes for taking action. Cheat code 4 is to externalize it. Now, why just the number 4 on the screen? Because 4 is the absolute maximum number of items your working memory can juggle at any one time. When you're overthinking, you're trying to mentally juggle like 20 things at once.
That creates a crushing cognitive load that basically tricks your brain into thinking everything is a massive urgent emergency.
So the solution to that crushing cognitive load lies in the Zeigarnik effect. This is a fascinating psychological principle that says unfinished tasks take up way more mental space than finished ones. The fix here is a simple 5-minute brain dump. Get a physical piece of paper and write every single worry down. This tricks your brain into treating those tasks as processed and externalized. It literally lifts the weight out of your working memory so it can finally rest. Cheat code 5 is mastering the action threshold. Analysis paralysis hits hard when you convince yourself, I just need to research one more thing, or I just need to think about this a little more. But look, thinking is not doing. The action threshold is the absolute minimum viable action you can take right this second. Opening the Messages app, writing one single sentence, booking just one appointment. You have to replace the imagined dopamine of overthinking with the actual, real-world progress of a tiny action.
And finally, cheat code 6, the sensory pattern interrupt. Listen, you absolutely cannot fight a cognitive fire with cognitive gasoline. If the mental loop is just too strong, you have to pull the plug. Use the 5-4-3-2-1 method. Out loud, name 5 things you see, 4 things you feel, 3 you hear, 2 you smell, and 1 thing you taste. This acts as a physical circuit breaker. It forces your brain to literally redirect its power away from that internal monologue of the default mode network and straight into your sensory cortex. The senses win, and the loop breaks.
Which brings us to part 4. Your brain is not broken.
If you take away nothing else today, I want you to remember this. Overthinking is evidence of a highly active, highly perceptive, and incredibly capable mind. The exact same cognitive engine that causes your 2 a.m. spirals, that's the very same engine responsible for your deep empathy, your rich creativity, and your thoughtful nature. The goal here isn't to shut it off forever. It's simply to teach it how to rest. And hey, as a quick aside, if you've ever felt defective or been called lazy because of this kind of mental exhaustion, I highly recommend checking out our other explainer, Why You're Not Lazy, to see how high intelligence often disguises itself.
And that brings us to my final coaching challenge for you today. What is one thing you have been overthinking that you could take a single, small action on today? I am challenging you right now. Cross your action threshold. Do it right this second, before this explainer even finishes. Pick that tiny step, get out of your head, and go do it in the real world. Your amazing brain has done more than enough work for today. It is time to give it a break. See ya in the next one.